Here we're at Queen's Park, the home of our provincial government that stands at 125 years old. It has been open since 1893, and it's been part of some of our most defining moments in our history, including times of war. November 11th is Remembrance Day, and as we know, we commemorate the achievements and contributions of our fallen soldiers who've sacrificed their lives for our country. But do we as Canadians really understand the magnitude and the impact of what our soldiers have done for us as a nation here in Canada? We at Remembrance Day must remember our achievements and understand that to honor our heroes is not something we should recognize just in our calendars, but also in our hearts. I'm Randy Prasad, and here are the top facts about Remembrance Day that every Canadian needs to know. While Remembrance Day has been traditionally and socially accepted as a time to commemorate the sacrifices that our fallen heroes, our Canadian soldiers, have given to us here in Canada and abroad for many years during the course of combat, the true significance of Remembrance Day is actually to mark the end of gunfire of World War I. See, World War I happened from 1914 to 1918, and when World War I ended, it actually ended on November 11th at 11 a.m. 1918. And what makes this year very unique is that this year, 2018, actually marks the 100th anniversary that the guns had fell silent of World War I. World War I happened from 1914 to 1918, and Canadians played a very significant role in that particular war. But the question is, how did we exactly get involved? Well, you see, the British Empire entered the war on August 1914, and when they went to war, we as Canadians had to follow suit. But it would beg the question, why did we have to follow along with the British Empire? I mean, after all, we received Confederation in 1867, which means we're an independent country, we can do as we will. Well, that's not necessarily the case. You see, we did have our independence, but only through domestic affairs. We were still under the British colony for foreign affairs. So when the British decided to go to war, we had to follow along. Actually, it wasn't until 1931, when the Statute of Westminster was erected, then we as Canadians got our true independence. Canadians served in a variety of different capacities during World War I, including trench warfare and many other aspects of war, which subjected them to so much physical and mental stresses and fatigue beyond our comprehension. But how many Canadians did serve in that war? Well, over 600,000 Canadians served in World War I from 1914 to 1918. Of that number, 170,000 were wounded, and over 60,000 of our soldiers were killed. So how much respect did the Canadian forces have during World War I? Well, they were outstanding on the Western Front, and they were proven to be masters of offensive warfare. They were so good that the German army would call the Canadian forces, of all titles, the Storm Troops. That's right, they were the original stormtroopers long before Star Wars. Even the Prime Minister, Lord George, would say, every time the Germans found out that the Canadians were coming, they would prepare for the worst. Remembrance is commemorated all across the country, and each event is opened with a soldier performing a trumpet, a melody that is known as the last post. It is a particular tune that is played at every Commonwealth military funeral and as well as the Remembrance Day events throughout the country. But the origins of that melody, the last post, actually goes back to times of war for two reasons. It was played at the end of every night to signify that the camp is ready to close down for the night because it's now safe and secure. Also, that melody would be played at the end of day of battle. So, for all the soldiers who might be wounded or lost out at field, the trumpet would play to signal those wounded soldiers to follow the sound, because that sound would lead them to safety. The last 100 days August 8th to November the 11th. And that was consisted of a string of battles that led to the defeat of the German army. But with the amount of contributions that the Canadian forces had made during those 100 days, that name evolved to becoming Canada's 100 Days. Why? Because of the amount of impact that the Canadians had made that led to the defeat of the German army. You see, because of the help of the Canadians, they were able to push the German army out of France and into Belgium with 4 very strategic battles, from the Battle of Arras, the Battle of Amiens, the Canal du Nord, and Cambrai. Now, one very strategic battle that Canadians are infamous for is none other than Vimy Ridge. Now, the reason why Vimy Ridge is not a part of the 100 days, because that successful battle that occurred 1 year prior on Easter Monday, April 9th, 1917, where the Canadians led to victory in defeating the Germans on that time. Women's rights started to flourish during World War I as many women served in the military, whether they were nurses and other roles, at the start of building their rights for, well, equal rights. On top of that, by 1917, any woman serving in the military or someone related to someone serving in the military actually got the right to vote as long as you were at the age of 21. At the end of World War I, by 1919, that right was extended to all Canadian women, giving them the right to vote. One of the most infamous war poems of all time, Flanders Fields, can be heard at assemblies, church gatherings, and many other services commemorating Remembrance Day. But where did this poem actually come from? Well, it was written by a physician and Lieutenant John McCrae. Did I mention he happened to be a Canadian as well? You see, after witnessing his friend and his death at the time of battle, World War I, he attended his funeral. The chaplain, surprisingly, was not able to attend the funeral, so members there asked John McCrae if he would speak and conduct the funeral services. Looking for words, he grabbed a pen and paper and penned on the spot what would be the infamous poem known as Flanders Fields. And in the first 13 lines of that poem, not only did it give rise to popularity of Flanders Fields, but it was the birth of the symbol of Remembrance Day, the poppy. The poppy, the official symbol of Remembrance Day, worn at every assembly to commemorate the efforts and the sacrifices that our fallen heroes have given to us during times of war to give us the very freedoms that we have here today. But where exactly did the poppy come from? Well, let's go back to Flanders Fields. You see, Flanders Fields was an actual field that's pretty much unkept to be able to grow any form of vegetation at all. But when it became one of the official sites to bury and honor our dead, a flourish of poppies began to grow. With a mixture of chalk and soil turning into lime, it actually contributed to the factors to grow tremendous amount of poppies throughout Flanders Fields. When the lime became absorbed, the poppies began to disappear. This November 11th is Remembrance Day. It's an opportunity for all of us as Canadian citizens to pay respect and honor those who've given their lives to serve this great country, past, present, and future. It's 2 minutes of our time to say thank you for the services you've done. And we as Canadians, it is our obligation to do so. So this Remembrance Day at 11 a.m., take a moment to give thanks, whether if it's at an assembly or the quiet spaces of your home. And let's reflect and remember that we as Canadians live a much better life today through the sacrifices of those of yesterday. And let's continue to honor Remembrance Day, not just a day in our calendar, but as a lifetime in our hearts.